All right, a happy Thursday. Hopefully everyone is doing great out there. We are going to do a little bit of a video. We've got an article up on ESPN.com where we take a look at all 400, and I guess it's now 441 with James Johnson signing in Indiana. Players that can't be traded, players that can be traded. December 15th, as I guess we deem it the unofficial start of the trade season. Basically, it's 81 players that signed free agent contracts in the offseason. Not all free agent contracts. We're going to go into kind of some of these restrictions that players have that signed offseason contracts can now be traded starting on Friday, December 15th. There's still a group of players that cannot be traded until January 15th, Rui Hachimura, for example. So we're kind of going to go into a little bit of the article that we have up on ESPN.com. It's more than a list. Like, we didn't just put out a list of like who can't be traded, who can be traded. Where we really dive into some of the trade rules that have changed under this new collective bargaining agreement. We've tiered it where you can see who fits into what category, for example. For example, the teams that have, these teams that are in the first and second apron, we've talked about that. Those high spending teams, you can go out and acquire players with 110%. Same with Philadelphia, New Orleans, the Lakers, New York. Teams that are kind of hovering around the either the luxury tax or that first apron. You have a limited spending power to go out and acquire a player. You're probably thinking, why is New York in there? Well, if a player has bonuses in his contract like RJ Barrett does, that counts against the first apron here. And then there's basically everyone else. It's that group of teams, certainly the Clevelands of the world and Brooklyn and Oklahoma City, Sacramento. It's basically 3/4 of the league that, based on how the trade is formulated, you can acquire players within 200%, 7.5 million, or 125%. So all that is on ESPN.com. And then there are teams like Indiana, Orlando that are still sitting on cap space. Indiana's right around 9 million. Orlando's right around $5 million. So you can go in there. There's a section on the traded player exception, and it gives you an idea as far as what teams have in spending power. It's funny. I was doing some research here. We deem this the unofficial start of the trade season because 81 players can now be traded, 88% of the league. Great. But when you go back and look at the last 2 years, this is the 21 and 22 season, and then last year, which is 22-23, there's been 37 trades since December 15th. 31 of those trades, this is the last 2 years, have come the week of the trade deadline or on the deadline day. When there's a deadline, people kind of drag their feet a little bit as far as trying to figure out what they want to do. And when you have the clock ticking, whether it be 48 hours or 72 hours, it puts a little bit of a sense of urgency here. Now, every year is different. So I don't want to say here, you know what, nothing's going to happen in the month of December with Zach LaVine or Pascal Siakam or some of these other players that we've certainly heard a lot about. Every team reacts differently. If Chicago has a deal on the table that on December 20th, for example, that they think is better than what maybe could be their February 1st, the likelihood is that they do something like that from a hypothetical standpoint here. And I think it's going to be interesting with players like Siakam as we get closer to the end of December, because once we flip into January 1st, the extension rules certainly change a bit. I've said it before, Siakam can extend for 191 and 192, somewhere around there. Once we get into January, and let's say he's traded, that number goes down to 2 for 84 because the 6-month restriction. So basically, if Siakam's still on the Raptors roster when we get into January, and he gets traded, he's not signing an extension with his new team, and he's going to play it out and become a free agent on July 1. So there is if the goal is for Toronto to go out and do a deal, I think there is a little bit of a sense of urgency to go out and do something now. And we have an article coming out. We've got 2 articles coming out. One on Monday with Kevin Pelton and I. We did a rookie ranking back in a month ago. We've got our second edition of the rookie rankings coming out. We take 10 players. We also have some other notes there. Mine and KP's are a little bit different. We're the same up top with the top 2. Mine at 3, I'm not going to give who I have. Think he is a little bit different than what KB has, and we write about it here. So we've got rookie rankings coming out, and then we've got the one article I do every year is that, and this is not the trade guide, that will be in sometime mid-January. I've already started working on that, except for maybe the what to watch part, because that's very fluid. The one article, and I think everybody enjoys, is we take all 30 teams. We ask what front office should be asking internally, about 5 or 6 questions. We look at who's off the board, who can't be traded, controllable contracts, value contracts, finances, draft capital, long-term salary for every team. All 30 teams has a section here, and it can kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what some of these front offices are thinking about as far as, for example, Atlanta. Atlanta is struggling mightily. Quinn Snyder gets hired last end of February. You're in year 2 of the Trae Young Dejounte Murray pairing. Fair question. Or is it too premature to ask if this pairing works? What's the identity of the Hawks roster here? What do you need to do to become more than a 500 team? So that's kind of what we take a look at for some of these teams, and we'll do a video on that next week. Next week is the week of the 18th. We've got down by me in Florida, in Southwest Florida, we've got the City of Palms tournament. In Fort Myers, we're going to get Mount Verde down here, so we get to see Cooper Flag, and then I'm driving up to Orlando on Tuesday for the G League Showcase. It's like the winter meetings. Certainly, that's where a lot of the trade chatter starts to go here. So, a little bit about the article. We've got 81 players. We've kind of split it up here. First, the group of players who can be traded started on Friday, December 15th. Those are the players that signed free agent contracts prior to September 15th. It's 3 months or December 15th as far as when you have that restriction. So there's 81 of those players, anywhere from Javon Carter in Chicago, Karis LeVert in Cleveland. That's the group of players that now go into the pool. Now there's another group of players here, which we call these either the January 15th players, which, for example, are Cam Johnson in Brooklyn. So Cam Johnson signs a contract with the Nets with the Bird exception, and it's for 120. It's for 20% more than his salary in the prior year. Cam Johnson's coming off a rookie contract signed in Phoenix, now with Brooklyn, and now is starting number at $25.7 million. So he falls into that January 15th bucket. PJ Washington in Charlotte, January 15th. Kobe White. There's a group of players there that still have trade restrictions, which they call January 15th. There's another group of players that signed extensions that have a 6-month restriction here. That's the Dejounte Murray in Atlanta. His is January 9th. Nikola Vucevic in Chicago. That's a December 28th. So basically, it's 6 months from when they signed that extension. That's when that starts to get lifted here. We also have players that have signed during the season that stretches because it's 3 months. You sign a contract on October 1st, for example, you have a January 1st restriction because it's the 3-month restriction here. There is a group of players that sign rookie extensions here, which we label and we call that the poison pill restriction. They're still eligible to be traded, but there's a formula that the league looks at as far as what goes in and what incoming and outgoing salary is different based on the extension. There has not been a player who signed a rookie extension with the poison pill restriction traded since Devin Harris was traded. And I say this every year. Devin Harris was traded from Dallas to New Jersey in a Jason Kidd trade. I was part of that front office that acquired Harris, and there was some creative mathematics that we needed to kind of get that done here. So those are a lot of the different restrictions here. Matched offer sheet. Matisse Thybulle in Portland signs an offer sheet in Dallas. He can't be traded to the Mavericks this year, and he has veto power on any trade. We list the one-year bird restriction here. Player like Russell Westbrook or Kevin Love, they sign a one-year contract. They're going to have early bird or bird rights next year. They have veto power on any trade. Westbrook gets traded. He can say no or yes. If he gets traded, he loses the early bird exception, the ability to kind of exceed the salary cap to sign him here. So there are a pool of players that still cannot be traded or still have restrictions. And then what we do is, so those are your two buckets, the December 15th players and then the players that still have trade restrictions. And then we take everyone else. And this is kind of like being the matchmaker, right? If you're doing a dating game. We certainly have the description on all the different trade restrictions. And then we list all the trade eligible players. But we don't just list them. We tier them. So you've got your franchise players in a group: Curry, Durant, Jokic, LeBron, Embiid, Giannis, Luka. I put Devin Booker in there. I think he's a franchise player. Jason Tatum. Then we go all NBA, and we give you position, team, salary, how many years left. So if you're a Chicago Bulls fan, you think, okay, Zach LaVine is making $40.1 million. And I can take back 110% of salary because I don't want to go into apron. What salary can I add up there? And it's a fun little exercise that you can go through. But we have everything broken down from franchise, all NBA, Jimmy Butler, De'Aaron Fox, Lillard, all-stars, top starter. Okay, so that's Clay's in that group. Rudy's in that group. Probably will be up in that all-star category. We've got starters, key reserves, rotational players, and then the big pool of developmental players. And it's basically all the players that were drafted in the first and second round that fall under that. So it's a fun document to go out and read. As I said, we have another big one coming out next week. We've got 2 documents coming out. The trade chatter, certainly you're going to hear a lot. What we see, I talked about it in Golden State with the Draymond Green situation and how that roster is certainly stumbling. We've got a video out on that. I would say, there are, and we'll do more when we get later down the road. Listen, you're going to hear a lot about a lot of different teams. It's important to remember what teams have, and it takes 2 to tango. You're going to hear, well, Milwaukee needs a defense presence. Okay, well, what do you have? And Brian Windhorst put an article up about championship contenders. Well, Milwaukee doesn't really have anything to go out and trade. What does Phoenix have to go out and trade? Do they want to break up players? Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, limited in draft assets here. Teams to keep an eye on certainly is going to be Toronto. Feels like we talk about them every year with Siakam, OG, Gary Trent. Certainly Chicago with LaVine. I think that's priority for the Bulls to somehow shed that contract, even if you bring back 3 players that are serviceable players. I wouldn't get caught up in trying to recoup 3 first-round picks. That's not going to happen. I don't see anything with the Lakers down the road. That's hard for me to see just based on how these new CBA rules and breaking up that contract. You basically have to trade 3 or 4 players here. But we'll go more into the trade dynamics next week when we look at all 30 teams as far as some of these big questions. The article is up on ESPN.com. You can find the Draymond Green article on YouTube. You can find this video on YouTube. We'll pump out more videos when we get it, and hopefully everyone has a great Thursday.
Try to boast at what I look like. Pick them James, how they wear, I pull up long range. Jimmy with the heat, I'm on fire. It's NBA on ESPN time.